billions of dollars, which is what our budget does, in order to prevent a debt crisis from ruining the American dream for Americans. With that, Mr. Speaker, I will reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Wisconsin reserves. The gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Van Hollen, is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. There's agreement here on two things. One, we need to reduce our long-term deficits. The question is not whether we need to do that, but how. Second, we agree that the automatic, indiscriminate meat axe cuts scheduled to begin next January are the wrong way to reduce the deficit. We need a responsible alternative. Now, the House Democrats put forward a budget, as did the President, that deals with this issue over 10 years in a balanced way, building on the more than $1 trillion of cuts we already made on a bipartisan basis last August, and including additional cuts, but also cutting tax loopholes that benefit special interests and asking people who make more than $1 million per year to help a little bit more toward deficit reduction. That is the kind of bipartisan approach that's been recommended by bipartisan groups like Simpson-Bowles and Rivlin-Domenici. Unfortunately, the Republican approach to the budget and now to the sequester issue takes this lopsided approach. Now, let's remember, 98% of our House Republican colleagues, while they come down here and talk about how we have this big deficit and debt problem, they have signed a pledge that says we're not going to ask for 1 penny of additional contribution from people making more than $1 million a year to help reduce our deficit. Not 1 penny. We won't take 1 penny of taxpayer subsidies away from the big oil companies to help reduce the deficit. And the math is pretty simple after that. If you say from the beginning you're not going to ask people making $1 million a year to help do a little more to reduce our common deficit, if you say you're not going to ask companies that have these tax loopholes that actually incentivize them to ship jobs overseas to pay a little bit more, what do? Your budget has to whack everyone else. And that's what it did. That's why their budget ended the Medicare guarantee. That's why they cut $800 billion from Medicaid. 2/3 of Medicaid spending goes to help seniors and disabled people in nursing homes. That's why they slash vital investments in education, research, infrastructure, things that had been bipartisan investments to help our economy grow. That's what they did then. And now on the sequester proposal, what do? The chairman talks about eligibility. These are people who are eligible to get food and nutrition assistance because they're struggling. And the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, which is our referee around here, has told us what the consequences, the real-world consequences of their proposal before us today would be. Over 22 million households with kids would see their food and nutrition support reduced. 300,000 kids knocked off the school lunch program. 300,000 kids knocked off the children's health insurance program. Those are the kind of choices they make because they refuse to take a balanced approach to this deficit issue. Now I want to say one word about defense spending. Last August, as part of the Bipartisan Budget Control Act, our Republican colleagues deliberately chose to expose defense spending to deep additional cuts rather than ask millionaires and big corporations to share greater responsibility for paying for our national security. Now our Republican colleagues are on the floor today saying these defense cuts would devastate our national security, but they still, even today, apparently aren't concerned enough about the impact of those cuts on national security to ask millionaires to pay a little bit more for our common defense. That's the same kind of mentality that led us to put 2 wars, one in Iraq and Afghanistan, on our national credit card. Even as we asked our soldiers to sacrifice, we said we're just going to put that on our national credit card. So there's a fundamental question here. Fundamental question. If you're so concerned about those cuts to defense, why is it you won't close one special interest tax loophole to help pay for them? We, the Democrats, had a substitute amendment that we would have been able to debate and vote on right here today. We took an alternative approach. We also prevented those defense cuts. You know how we did it? We said we don't need to make these big agricultural subsidies and direct payments. We also don't think we should have big subsidies, taxpayer subsidies for the big oil companies. We did it in a different way. And apparently, our Republican colleagues are kind of worried about what we were going to propose because they brought a closed rule to the floor, meaning Democrats didn't have an opportunity to get a vote on our alternative. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Maryland reserves his time. The gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Ryan, is recognized.
I yield myself 1 minute to say, Mr. Speaker, that the gentleman's substitute raises taxes $85 billion and raises spending $55 billion on the net to achieve simply $30 billion in deficit reduction. This bill achieves $243 billion in deficit reduction without raising taxes. The ratio of spending increases, tax increases to spending cuts gross, 3-to-1. That's what they think balance is. Let's look at food stamps. Food stamps went up 270% over the last decade. If this passes, it will have gone up 260%. Let's talk about Medicaid and S-chip. This program has gone up 50% over the last 10 years. It's projected to grow 125% over the next 10 years. If this passes, it will grow 123% over the next 10 years. If we can't have a civil debate about how to slow the growth of spending around here, then we'll never get this under control. Medicaid alone made $15.8 billion in overpayments in 2011 alone. If we can't deal with this waste, if we can't deal with this overspending, we can't fix this problem. With that, Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to yield 7 minutes of my time to Mr. Hensling of the Financial Services Committee and ask unanimous consent that he be allowed to yield time.
Without objection, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Hensling, will control the time. He is recognized for 7 minutes.
I thank the gentleman from Wisconsin for yielding, and Mr. Speaker, I would like to yield 1 minute to the distinguished chairman of the Financial Services Committee, the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Baucus.
The gentleman from Alabama is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, the Financial Committee's work on this reconciliation package saves more than $35 billion. But more importantly, it does what 2,300 pages of Dodd-Frank, 400 new regulations, over 2,000 newly hired federal regulators, many of them living in my Maryland colleagues' district, and more than $24 million worth of compliance work required of America's companies at the cost of $100 billion. It ends the bailouts. A bailout fund doesn't end the bailout. It guarantees them. We're telling the big banks what my Democratic colleagues didn't want to tell them. If they make risky bets and make bad decisions, they're on the hook, not the taxpayers. No more privatizing the profits, no more socializing the losses. In short, no more bailouts, period. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Reserve the balance of my time.
Your time's expired. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Hensling.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
At this time, I yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from Ohio, Ms. Kaptur.
Gentlelady from Ohio is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank Ranking Member Van Hollen. Well, here we are again. America is still recovering from the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression, and the Republicans don't seem to understand that we need to focus on job creation. Our economy has been producing private sector jobs each month for the last 2 years in stark contrast to the Bush years. But today we're not debating job growth to balance the budget. We aren't considering a transportation bill today, no. That would create the most new jobs, making real investments in America by putting people back to work and growing our economy. Today, we are debating nothing more than the latest political talking points for the Republican Party. We all know that this strategy is going nowhere in the Senate. So instead of focusing on economic growth and job creation, the Republicans have decided to protect their rich friends and slash the programs that the most needy in our country depend upon. While protecting the well-heeled, here's what the Republican bill does to ordinary families. Cuts health coverage for the least among us, 300,000 low-income children. The Republican bill slashes food and nutrition support for the unemployed and for struggling children and families. The Republican bill eliminates social services block grants, which gives states and local communities flexibility to target funding for essential services like Meals on Wheels, preventing child abuse and neglect, and providing child care for working parents. The Republican bill wants to repeal the Prevention and Public Health Fund established under the Affordable Care Act. And what does that do? It supports cancer screenings, including for breast and cervical cancer, immunizations, education, research, and prevention, which in the end saves the most money. Prevention saves money. If the Republicans were serious about putting our fiscal house in order, they would put forward a serious proposal that grows our economy and creates jobs to balance the budget and involves shared sacrifice. That's how you balance budgets. You grow the economy. I look forward to that day. Mr. Speaker, I yield back my remaining time to Mr. Van Hollen.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. Gentleman from Texas, Mr. Hensling, is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, at this time, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Nagelbauer.
Gentleman from Texas, Mr. Nagelbauer, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, a lot of discussion here this morning about who we're protecting. Well, really, the reason we're here today is to protect the future of America. You know, they're throwing around a lot of large numbers here, but I think what we need to do is put in perspective of what we're talking about today. I want to talk to you about a little family that's making $24,000 a year. Unfortunately, this family is spending $37,000 a year, so they're spending $13,000 more a year than they're making. And they just got their credit card statement the other day, Mr. Speaker, and they found out they owe $157,000 on their credit card. And people out there would say, that's a family that doesn't have a future. Unfortunately, the family that I'm just talking about here, Mr. Speaker, is the United States of America, because I took the 8 zeros off at the front of these numbers that we're kicking around today. So I think the American people ought to be excited that we're here today, you know, making a start. And let me point out, this is just a start to addressing a very large problem. And so when we go into some of the programs out there like the Consumer Protection Financial Bureau, basically that was tucked inside the Fed, has no accountability, that was the reason I was pleased to introduce H.R. 1355 to bring accountability to that. The American people deserve accountability, and they also deserve for this body to come together and work on this very large problem, because as has been pointed out, a lot of the things that we actually voted on, in fact, this $13,000 deficit, if we eliminated the part of spending that we are talking about voting on in these appropriation bills, it only eliminate $11,000 of that deficit. And so this family would still have a $2,000 budget deficit even after we eliminate all of the programs that we vote on. Mr. Speaker, this is the business that we are supposed to be about. Let's work together and protect the future of our children and our grandchildren so that they will have a future, they will have an opportunity to have jobs and opportunities in America. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Nagelbauer, yields back. The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Hensling.
I reserve, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Van Hollen, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just would like to respond to the chairman of the Budget Committee in terms of the ratio of cuts to revenue. I think the gentleman will recall that one of the recommendations that the bipartisan commissions made was the $1 trillion in cuts that we made as part of the Budget Control Act. That was 100% cuts. If you take that into account, the reality is what we've done so far with our proposal is 92% cuts, 8% revenue. And with that revenue generated by closing those tax loopholes I talked about earlier. And with that, I yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Wasserman Schultz.
Gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Wasserman Schultz, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in opposition to the Sequester Replacement Reconciliation Act, the second phase in the Republicans' Pathway to Poverty plan. This bill once again fails to reach any measure of fairness and shared responsibility. All of us agreed that the implementation of sequestration would be a damaging, harmful approach to take in an effort to achieve deficit reduction. The difference between Democrats and Republicans is that instead of taking a balanced approach, the Republicans would replace sequestration with tax breaks to millionaires and special interests, while ending the Medicare guarantee, slashing investments that strengthen our economy, and shredding the social safety net. Not surprisingly, important provisions of the Affordable Care Act are in their sights. The Prevention and Public Health Fund was an unprecedented investment in our nation's health and well-being, particularly the health of America's women and children. By providing funding for vital cancer and infection screenings, modernizing vaccine systems, and the fight against epidemics like obesity and diabetes, this fund truly invests in our nation's health. And it will provide savings down the line by helping to catch afflictions early. By seeking to undermine the Affordable Care Act, the Republican reconciliation bill would eliminate funding for hundreds of thousands of life-saving screenings, all to score political points with their extreme base. Mr. Speaker, just a few years ago, when I was 41 years old, I found a lump in my breast, which was confirmed to be cancer in a series of screenings, including a clinical screening, just like the ones that this fund provides. These screenings saved my life. But this bill would prevent 326,000 women from having access to the same life-saving screenings that I did. It will prevent an estimated 10,300 women from being diagnosed with breast and cervical cancer in its early stages, and it may cost them their lives. Furthermore, this bill slashes funding for screening for birth defects, developmental disabilities, and hearing loss in children. How can any of us in good conscience cut funding by cutting investments in children's health? Frankly, as a mom of 3 young kids, I'm stunned, because I think it's just common sense that you don't pay down a deficit our children didn't create by compromising their health. Our constituents deserve a balanced approach to deficit reduction. The Republicans' approach would deny women like me access to screenings that save lives and children the screenings they need so we can keep them healthy. It's unacceptable, and I ask colleagues with a conscience to vote down this terrible bill.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Hensarling, is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself 2 minutes.
The gentleman is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, it's important for us to remember why we are here. We are here because the President's policies have failed. $1 trillion deficit, a second $1 trillion deficit, a third $1 trillion deficit, and now a $4th $1 trillion deficit, putting the nation on the road to bankruptcy. That's why we have a reconciliation bill before us. I hear my friends on the other side of the aisle talk about deep cuts. The deepest cuts that are happening in America today are to the family budgets of breadwinners who are either unemployed or underemployed due to the economic policies of this administration. We just got the news last month, 3rd month in a row where job growth is down. We're not even keeping pace. We have the lowest labor force participation rate in 30 years because, Mr. Speaker, people have given up on the Obama economy. Those are the deep cuts that truly count. Republicans have a plan for America's job creators. We want to get this economy going, and as we do, as people go back to work, they get off of the welfare checks onto the paychecks. That's what counts. And so Republicans have brought forth a reconciliation plan that says, you know what? Maybe we ought to quit spending money we don't have, and maybe this will help provide part of the confidence that job creators need to put America back to work. And I'm very proud of the work that was done on the Financial Services Committee, among other things, to end the perpetual Wall Street bailout fund that was put in by the Democrats in the Dodd-Frank bill, because if you lose your ability to fail in America, you lose your ability to succeed, and the American people are tired of the bailouts. And I'll continue to reserve it.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Van Hollen, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I turn to one of my colleagues, let me just say in response to my friend, Mr. Hensarling, the American people are well aware of what was happening in the economy the very day the President was sworn in as President of the United States, losing 800,000 jobs every month, the economy in free fall, almost 9% negative economic growth. People's retirement savings had dropped by 1/3 compared to where they were in 2007. That's the economy the President inherited. As a result of the extraordinary measures taken by the President, by the previous Congress, and most importantly with the fortitude of the American people, what we see is this. After the day the President was sworn in, when the economy was in free fall, those are jobs lost, we began to lift ourselves slowly out. We have now had 25 consecutive months of positive private sector job growth. Is it enough? No. Of course, we had no help from our Republican colleagues in working on the turnaround. The President's jobs bill that he submitted to this House last September is still sitting here. Fortunately, we finally did a piece of it with the payroll tax cut. My Republican colleague says the Republicans have an answer. Their answer is back to the old trickle-down economics. Another round of tax breaks for the folks at the very top. Somehow that's going to trickle down and lift everybody up. Well, you know what? We tried it. It didn't work. It was called 8 years of the Bush administration. We had 2 back-to-back tax cuts at the end of the 8 years. Net positive, net job loss in the private sector after those 8 years, and big deficits. Last time we had a balanced budget here was 2001, before those policies. So it's important for us to get the history of the past right in order to make sure we know how to move forward properly in the future. And I now yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. Blumenauer.
The gentleman from Oregon, Mr. Blumenauer, is recognized for 2 minutes.
I appreciate the gentleman's courtesy in permitting me to speak on this, as I appreciate his setting the stage as terms of why we're here, in terms of what President Obama inherited when he was elected to office. But another reason we're here is because the Republican leadership doesn't want to work with us in a balanced and reasonable way to reduce the deficit and get us on a sustainable path. Nothing is a greater illustration of this than the response to an amendment that I offered in the Budget Committee. Monday, when we were dealing with this, I offered up to my colleagues, instead of eliminating food stamp benefits for 2 million people, for cutting benefits for 20 months, reducing benefits for 44 million people in total, school lunches for 280,000 children, I said, wait a minute. Why don't we work together on something that we agree on? I've worked with the chairman of the Budget Committee in the past to try and reform agriculture subsidies. We got a reconciliation from the Ag Committee that takes it all out of nutrition for poor people, for children, for struggling families. I said, why don't we go to where we agree? Crop insurance wastes billions. Direct payments go to farmers who don't need them and don't deserve them. We have an opportunity to put reasonable limits on the amount that goes to the wealthiest agribusiness interests. We've worked on that together. A majority of the Budget Committee, I'm sure, agrees, and it would pass on the floor. And we could meet this objective and more without assaulting the well-being of 44 million struggling Americans. I've looked at those people in my community, and I can't imagine my colleagues who are proposing this have worked with the food kitchens, have worked with the food stamps recipients. May I have 30 additional seconds?
Yield the gentleman another 30 seconds.
The gentleman's recognized for 30 seconds.
The answer, in part, was, well, we can't do this because we do agree on some farm reform, but we have to do it when we reform the Farm Bill. That's coming up for reauthorization later. You have to do it in the Farm Bill. That's where we deal with direct payments. That's where we deal with crop insurance. Hello? Where are food stamps authorized? They're in the exact same Farm Bill. And the Republicans have decided they're going to ignore this opportunity. They're going to, for a bipartisan compromise that will save more money and protect families, and instead they're going to protect agribusiness and avoid an opportunity for everybody to win on the floor. It's shameful and should be rejected.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Henseling, is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Canseco.
The gentleman is recognized for 30 seconds.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the gentleman from Texas for yielding. The Financial Services Committee has responsibly contributed roughly $35 billion in deficit reduction measures to this bill, and I'm happy that one of these measures that I sponsored, a repeal of the Office of Financial Services, was adopted by voice vote in our committee. This agency, created by the Dodd-Frank, is a threat to the privacy of every American citizen, and it has no place in a system of checks and balances such as ours. Repealing the OFR will save $270 million over 10 years, and Americans will be better off for it. I yield back the balance, sir.
Gentleman from Texas, Mr. Henseling, is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'll yield myself the remaining minute and a half.
The gentleman is recognized for a minute and a half.
Mr. Speaker, the American people know that after the nation's first, second, third, and now fourth $1 trillion deficit, the American people know, after the worst employment record in 30 years, that the problem is with the President's economic policies, and ultimately this debate comes down to this. Do we have a debt crisis because Washington spends too much or because the American people are undertaxed? My colleagues on the other side of the aisle say a nation can tax its way into economic growth, tax its way into economic prosperity. They want to impose taxes on 40% of the income on small businesses and somehow think they will create more jobs. Mr. Speaker, if you gave them every job-harming tax increase that they have asked for, it's roughly 16% of the additional $11 trillion of debt that the President wants to put on this economy, our children, and our grandchildren. The American people know we can do better. It is time to quit spending money we don't have for jobs the stimulus program never creates. And so I'm proud to be a part of this reconciliation package, which will save the draconian cuts that are aimed at our warfighters and their families, and be able to begin the process of assuring that a great nation lives within its means and that we can give the next generation greater hope, greater opportunity, greater economic growth. And I urge all my colleagues to support this reconciliation bill. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Van Hollen, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would just point out that the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office has stated that as a result of the economic recovery bill and the extraordinary actions that were taken, over 4 million jobs were created or saved. Hey, that means a lot to the people who didn't lose their jobs, the people who were losing their jobs at the rate of 800,000 per month when the President was sworn in. Are we where we want to be? Of course not. Are we a lot better off than we were? We're pulling ourselves up, and the last thing we want to do is go back to where we were. Now, nobody on the Democratic side has said we can deal with this on the tax side alone. I keep hearing that's just not true. We just voted on a bipartisan basis in August for $1 trillion in cuts. What we propose is what every bipartisan group that's looked at this challenge has said. You have to do this through a combination of cuts, but you also got to get rid of all that pork barrel stuff in the tax code and use some of that to reduce our deficit. Ask the folks who have been making over $1 million a year to help pay more for our common defense. That is just common sense. And with that, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Doggett.
Mr. Speaker,
the gentleman from Texas is recognized for 2 minutes. Mr. Doggett.
Mr. Speaker, normally when we think of reconciliation, we think of a coming together, of a finding common ground. This is not such reconciliation. Rather, this is a bill that provides more tax breaks to the few and more pain to the many. It is, in fact, a wreck, as in a train or auto wreck reconciliation. Now, there is legitimate concern that we must address our budget difficulties to avoid a long-term budget wreck. But I am concerned about the wreck that this legislation under consideration today poses to the lives of so many Americans. It is a wreck for educational opportunity. The failure of this Budget Committee to address the needs of our youngest Americans with Head Start and early learning, the failure to extend the more education tax credit that I authored for more opportunity at the Alamo colleges at Texas State and institutions across this country. It is a wreck for our most vulnerable neighbors, the Texas seniors who rely on one hot meal a day from Meals on Wheels. Their director says it will be devastating to eliminate the Social Services Block Grant, a wreck for those seniors. It is a wreck for those who are relying on food security, like the 74-year-old who gave me this plate at the food bank in San Antonio. My Social Security check doesn't give me enough to buy any groceries. just my rent and utilities. Without the food bank, I would starve. Those are the kind of people for whom it is a wreck right now. Now, we had a president once who realized the need for shared sacrifice. He had almost half of his budget from new revenue by what he said was closing off special interest loopholes, and he said that is just a matter of simple fairness. His name was Ronald Reagan. I think we might follow that example. Do you have another 30 seconds?
I yield the gentleman another 30 seconds.
The gentleman from Texas is
We would
recognized for 30
contrast that
seconds.
example with those Republican presidential candidates who said they wouldn't give $1 of additional revenue for $10 of spending cuts. This is a reconciliation bill that asks nothing of Mr. Exxon, that asks nothing more of hedge fund managers, but asks those who are most vulnerable in our society to share more pain. I think we must reject this wreck, a wreck for so many American families, this reconciliation bill, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Van Hollen, reserves. The gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Ryan, controls the time for the majority.
Mr. Speaker, I'll yield myself 1 minute to just address a few of these. If you're eligible for food stamps today, you'll be eligible for food stamps tomorrow under this bill. We're simply saying you have to be eligible for this benefit to actually get the benefit. The slush fund, which is called the Preventative Services Fund, it doesn't fund cervical and breast cancer research. It funded things such as the Pike County, North Carolina, funds for signage to promote recreational destinations, including public parks, bike lanes, and more. The City of Boston got a $1 million grant for urban gardening. The New York Department of Health used a $3 million taxpayer-funded grant from this fund to lobby for a soda tax initiative. The Cascade Bicycle Club Education Foundation received $3 million to the Seattle and King County Public Health facility to use taxpayer dollars to, quote, improve the walking and biking environment. This is where our taxpayer dollars are going. The child tax credit. One investigation in Indiana said illegal immigrants receiving $29,608 for 20 children that they claim for the tax credit who live in Mexico and have never visited the United States before. Yielding myself 30 additional seconds, Mr. Speaker, what we're saying is government spending on these programs should go to the people who are intended, not for people who are not eligible and are not intended. If we're going to do prevention for health care, then do cancer screening, do cancer research. Don't fund signs for bike paths. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the distinguished chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, Mr. McKean.
The gentleman is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in strong support of H.R. 5652. 50% of the savings that we have already generated this year have come from the military cuts. And we're talking about adding another $500 to $600 billion on top of that next January with sequestration. That's over $1 trillion a year coming out of military over the next 10 years, while defense spending only accounts for 20% or less than 20% of our budget, and while we're fighting a war in Afghanistan and facing other uncertainties around the world. Let me remind everyone here of the major consequences of sequestration. 200,000 troops will be taken out of the Army and the Marines, bringing our force level down below pre-9/11 levels. Ability to respond to contingencies in North Korea and Iran and other places, hotspots around the world, will be put in jeopardy. A fleet of fewer than 230 ships, a Navy that has protected the sea lanes around the world. Our commerce, 95% of our commerce travels on the sea. They've protected that since World War II. They'll be taken down to pre-World War I levels. We'll have a smaller Air Force than any time since the Air Force was created, and 2 rounds of base closure. That's why Secretary Panetta has said it's not shooting ourselves in our foot with sequestration, it's shooting ourselves in the head. That's why 31 organizations representing more than 5.5 million American troops and veterans have called on Congress to act immediately to prevent these catastrophic cuts to our military. Mr. McKenna, Mr. Speaker, I urge all members to support our troops, support our national security, and support this bill, and I yield back.
The gentleman from California yields back his time. The gentleman from Wisconsin reserves. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also urge all our colleagues to support our troops and support our military. And the Democratic substitute that we offered would have made sure that the sequester on defense spending did not take place. And I have great respect for the chairman of the Armed Services Committee, Mr. McKeon, who just spoke. And here's what he said not long ago. He says, quote, "We need to address our budget problems comprehensively through smarter spending and increased revenue." He also said, and I quote, "If it came that I only had two choices, one was a tax increase and one was a cut in defense over and above where we already are, I would go to strengthen defense." Well, in our Democratic substitute, we said, let's close some of those tax loopholes to generate a little more revenue to help pay for defense. Let's ask people who are making over $1 million a year to get rid of some of their tax breaks to help pay for our common defense so that we don't have to have a budget that whacks everybody else in the country. That's what the chairman of the Armed Services Committee said. I agree with him. He got beaten down by many in the Republican Party after he made those comments. Oh, you violated that pledge that says we're not going to raise one more penny of revenue to reduce the deficit. But he was candid. Unfortunately, neither he nor any of us are going to have a chance to vote on the Democratic substitute that makes sure that we don't have the defense sequester. We just do it in a balanced way through cuts as well as closing some of these tax loopholes. I now yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Castor.
Gentlewoman from Florida is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, and I thank the ranking member. Mr. Speaker, two of the most prominent independent scholars on Congress recently completed a detailed research initiative, Thomas Mann and Norm Ornstein. They've never been shy in criticizing either side of the aisle. But their latest research concluded that the Republican Party has become so ideologically extreme, scornful of compromise, unpersuaded by conventional understanding of facts, evidence, and science. And they said, when one party moves this far from the mainstream, it makes it nearly impossible for the political system to deal constructively with the nation's challenges. The Republican budget is a perfect example of that. The Republican budget shields special interests from participating in deficit reduction and instead says we want to end Medicare as we know it, and we target children and our older neighbors and middle-class families for the overwhelming burden of deficit reduction. If a political party wanted to undermine the health and economic security of millions of American families, well, then this is the way to do it. And it's too bad, because I believe Democrats and Republicans agree on the need for deficit reduction. But we have starkly different visions on how to get there. Others have called this Republican budget extreme, reverse Robin Hood, destructive, and a threat to middle-class security. And here's an example. In the Budget Committee, I offered an amendment to say it's time. We don't have the luxury to be giving big oil companies tax breaks any longer. Instead, let's make sure that children across America can see a doctor, can get the immunizations that they need. But what was the vote? The Republicans rejected that common sense amendment. It was paid for by eliminating these big oil subsidies. This is what Thomas Mann and Norm Ornstein mean by they are ideologically extreme. It's not in keeping with our values as Americans, and I urge my colleagues to vote no on the Republican budget and sequestration plan.
Gentlewoman from Florida. Time has expired. The gentleman from Maryland reserves. The gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Ryan, is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'll yield myself 30 seconds to make 3 points. That line the lady used on Medicare was rated the lie of the year in 2011 by PolitiFact. Number one. Number two, the reason the Democratic substitute is not being considered is it violates the House rules. What's interesting about that is it would have violated the House rules that the Democrats had in place when they were in the majority. Third point is, when it comes to tax loopholes, we're proposing to close those tax loopholes in order to lower tax rates for American families and businesses to create jobs. They want to do it to prevent spending cuts. $3 of tax increases for $1 spending cuts is the math and the logic that the other side chooses to use. When you have a spending problem, you got to cut spending. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield 5 minutes. I ask unanimous consent to yield 5 minutes of my time to the chairman of the Committee on Agriculture, Chairman Lucas, and ask unanimous consent to be allowed to yield time.
Without objection, so ordered. The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes and controls the time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this legislation. It's no secret that we're facing a severe debt crisis right now. We have almost $16 trillion in debt piled up, and if we don't act quickly, we'll be passing a crushing burden onto our children and grandchildren. Reducing the government spending, though, is never an easy task. We face difficult choices, but House Republicans have lived up to our responsibility to find ways to cut our costs so that we can once again live within our means. The House Agriculture Committee has been asked to do its part by finding $33 billion in savings over 10 years. We did that by making credible, common-sense reforms to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. These provisions reduce waste and abuse and close program loopholes. SNAP, formerly known as food stamps, comprises almost 80% of the Agriculture Committee's mandatory spending. Over the past 10 years, the cost of SNAP has nearly tripled, increasing by 270%. The changes that we're proposing today cut only 4% over the next 10 years. I'd like to make it absolutely clear, none of these recommendations will prevent families that qualify for assistance under SNAP from receiving their benefits. We are working to better target the program and improve its integrity so that families in need can continue to receive nutritional assistance. Opponents of this legislation would have you believe that we're decimating the nutritional safety net and that hungry children and seniors will be left to fend for themselves. That is a false and misleading scare tactic. It's important to remember that many of the very people opposing these cuts proposed and voted for similar measures during the last Congress when they were in control of this body. Not once, but twice, my colleagues on the left voted to cut the temporary increase in SNAP benefits under the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. One of those cuts was to pay for the bailout of a union. And now that House Republicans are advocating that same policy, those across the aisle are crying foul. By ending the artificial increase in SNAP benefits, we can save $5.9 billion over 10 years. And we won't be turning that into more government spending. It'll go towards deficit reduction. This legislation also ends bonuses that have been awarded to states on the taxpayer dime. States are responsible for administering SNAP, and it's their duty to make sure the program is operating in the most efficient and effective fashion. We save nearly $500 million by ending bonuses that are given to states for merely doing their job. We also find savings by closing loopholes that allow states to game the system when administering SNAP. First, we stop the states from abusing the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, LIHEAP, to inflate SNAP benefits. States are exploiting, they've long since passed exploring, it's exploiting the interaction between LIHEAP and SNAP by sending token checks to households, which can trigger hundreds of dollars in increased SNAP benefits. LIHEAP is a valuable program for households in need of assistance with heating and energy costs. It shouldn't be abused in this fashion. In New York City, a $1 LIHEAP check triggers an additional $131 in SNAP benefits per month for nearly 90,000 households. In Washington State, a $1 LIHEAP check triggers an additional $43 million in SNAP benefits. That's egregious, and taxpayers know it. These token checks not only undermine the integrity of both SNAP and LIHEAP, but they also cost taxpayers billions of dollars in overpayments. Closing this loophole saves $14.3 billion over 10 years and ensures that both LIHEAP and SNAP are targeted to the families who truly need the assistance. Another loophole we've closed is called categorical eligibility, which allows any household that receives a benefit from certain low-income assistance programs to become automatically eligible for SNAP. Some of these benefits can be as simple as providing a household with a pamphlet or access to a 1-800 number. When states implement categorical eligibility, these households do not need to meet SNAP asset or gross income tests. That's how lottery winners slip through the cracks and continue to receive nutrition assistance. When someone is categorically eligible for SNAP, states don't have to verify assets like lottery winnings. It isn't just lottery winners that are unfairly collecting benefits either. The Cincinnati Enquirer reported that one woman collected $500 per month in SNAP benefits, had an $80,000 in savings, a paid-for home valued at about $300,000, and a Mercedes. So let me repeat what I said earlier. These provisions do not decimate the program and leave struggling families to fend for themselves. What they do is restore program integrity. They reserve taxpayer dollars for families that are in need of assistance. Every one of these provisions represents common sense and good government in a time of fiscal restraint. There's no denying that SNAP provides important support to many Americans. That's why it's important that we ensure the integrity of the program. Those who qualify for SNAP under the program law will continue to receive benefits. By voting for this package, we're not only doing our part to reduce the debt, we're improving the implementation of this important program while continuing to meet the nutritional needs of our fellow Americans. Yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Oklahoma's time has expired. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, I'd just like to respond to the chairman of the Budget Committee and point out that the Rules Committee waived 3 rules to bring the Republican legislation to the floor, waived 3 rules, couldn't waive 1 rule to allow a Democratic substitute to have an up or down vote, and the 1 rule you wouldn't waive is the one that rigs the process against closing special interest tax loopholes. To the chairman of the Agriculture Committee, I think everybody needs to know that the Ag Committee didn't reduce 1 subsidy to ag businesses, not 1. Even though the overall Republican budget says it should be $30 billion, there's a bipartisan bill that would do that, but not 1. Instead, they took $33 billion out of food and nutrition programs. Now, we should be very clear on this. People say that they're going to make sure that everyone who's eligible to get food stamps will, and then they say under SNAP, suggesting that there are a lot of people who are getting it who are cheating. That's not true. All those other people are eligible. They're eligible. And it's not Democratic scare tactics that's saying that all these people are going to lose their access to food and nutrition programs. It's the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. The referee here that was never contested by our Republican colleagues in the Budget Committee, they say 22 million American households with children will see their food and nutrition support reduced. 2 million Americans approximately will lose all access to the food and nutrition programs through SNAP. 300,000 kids will lose the school lunch program. Those aren't our facts. That's what the Congressional Budget Office says. With that, I yield the 2 minutes to the gentlelady from Oregon, Ms. Bonamici.
The gentlewoman from Oregon is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Ranking Member Van Hollen. I rise today in strong opposition to House Resolution 5652, the Sequester Replacement Reconciliation Act. Now, not long ago, we were here debating a very misguided budget resolution, and today, with this House resolution, the leadership has decided to double down on the draconian cuts that were contained in that budget. Now, we should be able to come together and have a frank discussion about deficit reduction. That is what the American people expect, and that's what the American people deserve. But instead, here we are today considering another resolution, and here we are today with another missed opportunity. There's not even the ability to consider a balanced alternative today. And this is a particular concern because of what is actually in this bill. Instead of cutting back generous agriculture subsidies, this bill is cutting food stamps, supplemental nutrition assistance program. This means a reduction in benefits for an estimated 47 million people and a loss of benefits for almost 2 million people. And instead of closing loopholes for oil companies, this bill eliminates the social service block grant, not reduces, not tweaks, eliminates the social service block grant, grants that assist states in providing a wide range of services, from support to Meals on Wheels to foster care. These are programs that feed struggling seniors and protect abused children, and these are just 2 examples. Now, we have a moral responsibility to get this right, Mr. Speaker. This bill, yet again, attempts to balance the budget on the backs of the most vulnerable, our seniors, our children, those who are struggling, while not asking the most fortunate in our society to contribute anything more. I urge my colleagues to reject this latest misguided effort by voting against House Resolution 5652, and I yield back, Mr. Speaker.
Gentlewoman from Oregon yields back her time. The gentleman from Maryland reserves. The gentleman from Wisconsin controls the majority time and is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself 30 seconds simply to say that the Social Services Block Grant, according to the General Accountability Office, is a textbook example of overlap and duplication of federal programs. It's one of 69 programs to fund early education. It's one of 200 programs serving Americans with disabilities. It's one of 49 programs providing education and training services. The program demands no accountability for results and provides no measure or means to measure the impact of the programs. Mr. Speaker, we've got to end duplication and waste in government. We're saying also on the tax side, close loopholes for tax reform, not to fuel more spending. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield 5 minutes. I ask unanimous consent to yield 5 minutes to Mr. Pitts, a member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, and ask unanimous consent that he be allowed to yield time.
Objection is so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself.
The gentleman from Pennsylvania controls the time and is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The reconciliation package we bring to the floor today sensibly reduces spending so that we can continue to adequately defend our nation. The first responsibility of the federal government is to keep our nation safe from foreign threats. By cutting wasteful spending and reforming programs, we can continue to maintain a military that keeps us secure at home and makes the world a more peaceful place. I am proud to report that the Energy and Commerce Committee exceeded the budget instructions by $17 billion to save a total of $114 billion over 10 years. In 3 titles, we cut wasteful programs created by Obamacare, reform the Medicaid program, and reform our broken medical liability system. With the nation struggling with trillion-dollar deficits, the President chose to increase government spending by more than another $1 trillion with his health care law. This wasn't reform. It was a government takeover of 1/6 of the U.S. economy that will increase dependency and bankrupt the nation. We continue to push for full repeal, but also do everything we can to stop wasteful and unwise spending immediately. The Prevention and Public Health Fund is a classic example of how the government bureaucrats fail to spend public funds wisely. The health care law provided an advance appropriation of $16 billion and called for a permanent annual allotment of $2 billion per year for this fund. That's $2 billion a year in perpetuity. So in 2036, 2037, 2057, the Secretary of HHS has complete authority over this $2 billion to spend on whatever he or she wishes without coming back for appropriations authorization from Congress. Let's call this what it is. It's a slush fund for the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Almost any program can make a claim that it is preventative. The Secretary has the sole role of control of the fund, and so far has found some quite interesting ways to spend it. For example, in Pitt County, North Carolina, a recipient used the money to fund signage for parks and bike lanes. In Boston, they spent $1 million on urban gardening. One of the vaunted successes of the program was getting the city of Baldwin Park, California to put a 9-month moratorium on construction of fast food restaurants. Government should be encouraging job creation, not finding ways to stop it for a few months. New York spent $3 million to lobby for a soda tax initiative. Philadelphia spent money to push for higher state cigarette excise taxes. Why on earth is the federal government paying for campaigns to lobby state governments? These are all examples from just the last 2 years. Who knows what projects will get money in the future? We have numerous public health and prevention funds that can be managed through the yearly appropriations process. A permanent slush fund with limited oversight guarantees that money will be wasted every year. We also repealed the unlimited authority to fund the implementation of state health insurance exchanges. Obamacare gave the Secretary a credit card with no limit, a bottomless direct appropriation. This is unprecedented and unwise. Again, we need oversight in order to make sure that the public's money is being wisely spent. Congress never should have abdicated its authority in this area, and now we need to reclaim it. We defund the co-op program before billions of public dollars can be lost. The Office of Management and Budget estimates that a significant portion of the funds given to unproven co-ops would never be returned to the Treasury. We would stop this funding before HHS creates its own Solyndra. The President's health care law places a dramatically increased burden on state Medicaid programs. The maintenance of effort provisions restrict states from making common-sense reforms to stop fraud and abuse. We know that Medicaid is rife with fraudulent claims. In 2011, there were $15 billion in improper payments. We need to give states the flexibility to run these programs efficiently and to help the truly needy. We also repeal an unwise bonus program that encourages states to undermine the integrity of the program. We should not place unnecessary barriers to qualifying for Medicaid, but neither should we encourage states to oversimplify reviews of eligibility. We do not have unlimited funds. Again, Medicaid coverage needs to be open only to the truly needy. Finally, we include real medical liability reform in this reconciliation package. The President's health care law gave a pitiful $50 million. Did I have an additional 30 seconds?
Additional 30 seconds.
$50 million for liability reform demonstration projects. This is paying lip service to the $200 billion program, and I recently heard from a doctor who's been practicing in my district for decades. He bemoaned defensive medicine, but was even more concerned that doctors being trained in today's climate don't even realize that they're prescribing unnecessary tests. Defensive medicine is simply becoming the norm. Medical liability reform means saving for consumers, for doctors, and for the government. Mr. Speaker, I'm proud of the job we've done, Energy and Commerce Committee, and I now not only urge all my committees to support the reconciliation package, but yield to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Diaz-Balart.
The gentleman from Pennsylvania's time has expired.
I yield the gentleman additional 30 seconds.
I think
additional minute.
A minute. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise today to engage in a colloquy with my friend from Pennsylvania, Mr. Pitts, Chairman of the Energy and Commerce Health Committee. Mr. Chairman, I am clearly no fan of Obamacare, and I know that you are not as well, Mr. Pitts. And you and your committee have done some really excellent work in this reconciliation process and in eliminating some of the major spending abuses in this law. I do have a concern, however, with one of these provisions that would affect Puerto Rico and affect what Puerto Rico receives in Medicaid funding. The fact of the matter is that the question regarding Medicaid funding for the territories was a separate and has been separate from the many issues that many of us on this side of the aisle find so objectionable in Obamacare. For example, like the individual mandate, the raid on Medicare, and the slew of job-killing new taxes and regulations that are at least partially responsible for the unacceptable unemployment situation, including 10% unemployment among Hispanics in the United States. As you know, the bill before us returns Medicaid funding cap and federal match to pre-Obamacare levels for the U.S. territories. For years, the territories have expressed an additional 30 seconds, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Additional 30 seconds. I've got 3 other committees there.
Yes. For years, territories have expressed concern with the funding levels, and I believe that the PPACA was a vehicle to try to alleviate some of those concerns. Mr. Chairman, my hope is that we can work together, along with Governor Fortunio, by the way, who has been the most fiscal responsible governor in Puerto Rico, to look into the funding levels in Medicaid so that we can properly address the needs of the millions of U.S. citizens in the territories.
Mr. Chairman, I very much appreciate the gentleman's concerns. I want to assure him that these issues deserve the attention of my Health Subcommittee, and as we continue the legislative process, I'll gladly work with the gentleman and Governor Fortunio to address the needs of our most vulnerable citizens in the territories.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know it makes our Republican colleagues feel better when they pretend that these cuts don't harm real people, but the reality is they do harm real people, and the cuts that were made in the Energy and Commerce will mean that 300,000 children will no longer get health care through the Children's Health Insurance Program. That's not my fact. That's the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. We've heard a lot about the fact that the cuts to the Health Prevention Fund, the Prevention Fund to help provide for healthier starts, that won't have any impact. And we hear these stories coming up. I would just ask unanimous consent to put in the record information from the Centers for Disease Control that refutes this urban legend that somehow these funds were used for spaying or neutering dogs. I mean, these things just aren't true.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The reality is, it will mean that 326,000 women will not get